If you have been waking up cold at 3 in the morning, the fix is $3. It is sold in a place that has nothing to do with camping, and it fits under your shoulders and hips, and nowhere else. You know the night. You went to bed comfortable. Somewhere in the small hours you came awake with a stripe of cold running down your back, and you rolled over, and the cold found the new side inside a minute. So in the morning you decided the bag was a lie, and the following spring you spent $400 on a warmer one, and last October you woke up at 3 in the morning inside that one too. I ran a scout troop in the North Woods for 35 years, and better than 400 boys came up through it. Every autumn some worried father would tell me the same sentence, that he had bought the boy a good bag and the boy still came home cold, and every time the bag was fine. What that boy did not have was $3 of the right thing in the right place, and about 2 minutes of somebody explaining why. So here is what I am going to do. First, I am going to give you the number the whole business turns on. Because there is one, it is printed on half the gear in that store, and almost nobody has been told what it means, or the one thing about it that makes cheap answers work. Then the $3 fix, exactly what to buy, exactly how to cut it, and where it goes. Then the 3 mistakes that ruin it, including one I see grown men make every season. Then how the old camps stacked cheap things to beat expensive ones. And I will be honest at the end about the cold this will not handle, because there is some. Start with the part that is doing you in, and it is not the air. Heat leaves you in a few ways out there. Some goes off into the air, some goes up to the sky, some goes out with your breath. But those are slow and your bag handles them well enough. The one that ruins the night is conduction, which is heat moving out of you by direct touch, body against ground, and it is not in the same league as the others. Still air is one of the finest insulators there is. That is why every warm thing you own, the coat, the bag, the wall of your house, is really just a clever way of trapping air and holding it still. Soil is the opposite. Soil and the water in it carry heat away many times faster than air does. Your body is warm, the dirt is cold, and they are pressed together for 8 hours. And the ground is colder than you think. You would swear the air must be colder since the air is where the wind lives. It is not. On a clear night, the surface of the ground radiates its own heat away to the sky and ends up colder than the air above it, which is why you can wake to frost on the grass. On a morning the thermometer never once dropped below freezing. Now the part that finishes it. Your sleeping bag is not working underneath you, and it never was. A bag keeps you warm by loft, by all that filling standing up fat and holding still air inside it. Lie down on it, and everywhere your weight presses, that loft crushes flat. Under your shoulder blades, under your hip, it is 2 thin layers of fabric and nothing in between. The warmest and dearest part of your kit quits at exactly the spot the cold is coming in hardest. So everything between you and the dirt has to come from somewhere else. And here is the number that tells you how much. It is called R value, and you have seen it printed on pads and on the insulation in your attic. All it measures is how well a thing resists heat passing through it. Higher number, more resistance. And there are 2 facts about it that nobody bothers to explain, and both of them are on your side. The first is that R value adds up. Lay one thing on another and you get the sum of the 2. A little pad on top of a little something else is not a little pad anymore. That single fact is why cheap stacked answers beat one expensive purchase, and it is the reason the old camps never owned a pad at all and slept fine. And there is a plain way to picture what those numbers mean before you ever buy anything. Roughly speaking, a value of 1 is about right for a warm summer night. 2 will carry you through most 3-season use. 3 and up is where you want to be once the ground starts freezing, and serious winter camping runs higher still. Those are rough marks and not a promise, because bodies differ and so does ground. But they tell you the thing worth knowing, which is that the gap between a miserable night and a comfortable one is usually not some enormous number. It is often 1 point, and 1 point is exactly the sort of gap a cheap layer can close. The second is that you only need it where you press. This is the one that surprises people. The cold is not coming through the empty tent floor beside you. It is coming through the places your body is squeezing the loft flat, which is your shoulders and your hips, and to a lesser degree, your calves. Everywhere else, your bag is doing its job perfectly well. So a strip of insulation from your shoulders to just past your backside does the great bulk of the work of a full-length one. The old scouts knew that with a folded blanket long before anybody printed a number on anything. Put those two together and you have the whole trick, a short piece in the right place, added to whatever else you can get under you. So here it is, and it costs $3. You want a folding windshield sunshade, the reflective kind that people put inside the car windscreen in summer, sold at any discount store or automotive counter for $2 or $3. That is it. That is the fix. Now here is what it actually is, because the price makes people assume it is nothing. Peel back the shiny outer layer and what you have got is closed cell bubble insulation with a foil facing on it. The bubbles are sealed pockets of trapped still air, which is exactly the same thing a foam pad is doing, and the foil face reflects radiant heat back the way it came. It is not a lot of insulation. I will say that plainly, and I will come back to it. But it is real insulation. It is genuinely waterproof. It weighs almost nothing. It folds flat, and it costs about the same as a cup of coffee. Here is how you set it up. Unfold it and lay it out. Most of them are about the right width already for a set of shoulders, and if it is longer than you need, that is fine, because you want it running from the top of your shoulders down past your hips, and that is generally somewhere around 3 feet of length. Trim it with scissors if you want it neater. Put the shiny side up facing you so it is reflecting your own heat back rather than the ground's cold, and lay it on the tent floor. Then your pad, if you have one, goes on top of it. Then your bag on top of that. That is the whole method. 90 seconds of work and $3. Now, if this is already explaining a night you have had, tap the like button. That is the whole ask, and it takes a second, and it is what puts this in front of the next fellow, lying awake at 3 in the morning, blaming his sleeping bag. Then stay right here, because there are 3 ways to get this wrong, and the second one is the one I see grown men make every single season. The first mistake is thinking it replaces a pad. It does not, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. A sunshade on its own, on cold autumn ground, is better than bare floor by a wide margin, and it is nowhere near a proper pad. What it is very good at is being the extra layer underneath the pad you already own, and turning a pad that was not quite enough into one that is. And it is a fine answer for a summer night, for a truck bed, for a spare in the car, for a child, and for the trip where somebody forgot theirs. The second mistake is the one that gets people every year. They put it on top of the sleeping bag. It seems sensible enough, since it is shiny and it reflects, and they have seen the emergency blankets used that way. But underneath is where the loft is crushed, and underneath is where the ground is stealing from you, and a reflective sheet laid over the top of a bag mostly gathers your own condensation and wets the fill, which is the exact opposite of what you were after. Under you, always under you. The third mistake is putting it under the tent instead of inside it. Outside on the ground, it is protecting your tent floor from stones, which is a fine job, and it is doing almost nothing for your warmth because the insulation has to be between your body and the cold, and not on the far side of a sheet of nylon and a layer of crushed grass. Inside the tent, under the bag, every time. And 2 honest cautions to go with it. The stuff crinkles and there is no getting around that. So if you sleep beside somebody light of sleep, you will hear about it. and the thin ones tear at the folds after a season of hard use, which at $3 is a thing you replace rather than mourn. Now, there is a test that settles all of this, and it takes 1 minute and almost nobody does it. Before you unroll your bag for the night, you lie down on whatever you have built on your side, the way you actually sleep, with your full weight on it. Then feel for your hip. If you can feel hard ground through the whole stack at your hip, you have found the thin spot, and no amount of good bag on top is going to fix it. Get up, add another layer under that spot, and lie down again. That is the only check that matters, because the question was never how thick the pile looks with nobody on it. The question is how much is left underneath your hip when you are lying on it. And if the sunshade is not to hand, 2 other things off the same shelf do the same work. A roll of foam underlayment, the thin gray stuff sold for going beneath laminate flooring, is closed cell foam by the yard and costs very little, and you cut whatever length you want off it. A cheap exercise mat out of the sporting aisle is the same idea in a thicker form. Neither is glamorous, and both are real insulation, and both were doing this job in camps, long before anybody put a rating on a package. Before I give you how the old camps stacked this, do the second thing for me and subscribe. There is a whole shelf of this kind of plane, knowing that used to pass down from a father or an uncle or an old scoutmaster, and it mostly stopped passing, and I am working back through it, one video at a time. One tap and the next one finds you on its own. Now the part that turns $3 into a warm night. Because the sunshade is one layer, and the old way was never one layer, it was a stack. And now that you know our value adds up, you can build that stack yourself out of things you already own. Start with cardboard. Plain corrugated cardboard is rows of little air tunnels held between 2 sheets of paper, and for what it is a respectable insulator. 3 or 4 flattened boxes under your bag will change the character of a night. And every man who has ever slept rough in a city knows it. And he is not doing it because cardboard happened to be lying there. He is doing it because it works. It is bulky and it is useless once it gets wet, which is exactly why it belongs on top of that waterproof sunshade rather than under it. Then newspaper if you have it, and crumpled rather than flat. Flat paper is almost nothing at all. Crumpled paper is 1,000 little rooms full of still air, which is the entire principle again in the cheapest possible form, and a grocery sack of it packed under your torso will hold you up off the cold. Then your spare clothes. Everything you are not wearing goes underneath you and not on top of you. A fleece and a spare pair of trousers folded under your hips are worth far more to you down there than they will ever be anywhere else in that tent, because down there they are filling in the exact spot where your bag has given up. Then your empty pack. Lay it flat under your legs. That is padding you already carried in on your own back, and otherwise it spends the whole night standing in the corner, doing nothing for anybody. And if there is dry leaf litter or dead grass about, a good armful of it stuffed under a ground sheet or into a bag and laid under your torso is more insulation than most things you could buy, because dry leaves are very nearly nothing but trapped air. Gather far more than you think, because it compresses to almost nothing under a sleeping man, and take it from the top of the pile where it is dry and scatter it back in the morning. One thing about the order they go in, because it matters and it is easy. The waterproof layer goes on the bottom against the ground, because that is where the damp is coming from, and everything above it stays dry. The soft compressible things go in the middle, and whatever is smoothest goes on top, so you are not sleeping on a ridge. That is the whole of the arrangement. Now look at what you have built. A waterproof reflective layer, a few sheets of cardboard, a folded fleece, a pack under the legs. Not one thing on that list costs more than $3, and stacked together under the parts of you that press, They will hold you through a cold night far better than the single pad most people carry at a fraction of the money. And that is the thing I want you to take away more than any particular item. And it is the last one, and it is not a product at all. Warmth is a stack, not a purchase. Every layer you put between yourself and the cold adds to the one below it. There is no single correct object. There is only how much you have managed to get under the parts of you that press. And it does not care in the slightest whether it came from a catalog or a recycling bin or the floor of the forest. And once you see that, the whole wall of that store looks different. Every price tag on it is selling you trapped air in a tidier package. That is all. The down in the expensive bag is feathers holding air. The foam in the expensive pad is plastic with air whipped into it. The bubble in the $3 sunshade is air in a sealed pocket. Same job, same physics, wildly different prices, and the cheap one still counts toward your total. Nobody hid this from you. There is simply no money in telling a man to stack cardboard, so nobody tells him, and after 50 years of nobody telling him, a whole country came to believe that being warm on the ground is a thing you buy, rather than a thing you build. Now let me be honest about where this stops, because I promised I would. If you are camping in real winter on frozen ground or snow, $3 of anything is not your answer, and I will not pretend it is. That is proper cold, and it wants proper insulation underneath you, a good closed cell pad at minimum, and usually 2 layers, and there is no clever cheap trick that gets around it. The sunshade still earns its place in that stack as the bottom layer, and it is still worth having, but it is one part of a proper answer there and not the answer itself. I would rather tell you that plainly than have you find it out on a frozen night a long way from the truck. What I have given you is for the shoulder seasons and the cool summer nights, which is when most people are actually out there and most people are actually cold. So here is my last ask. Hit the notification bell, because that is the only one of the 3 that actually brings you the next video. Then leave a comment and tell me the coldest night you ever spent outdoors and what you were lying on when it happened. I read everyone, and now and again one of you hands me back something my own scoutmaster never knew. I want to leave you with what I told every boy on the first night of every cold camp standing out there in the dark, before the tents were even up. Build your bed before you build your fire. Every one of them thought that was backwards, because the fire is the exciting part and the fire is warm right now. But a fire dies at midnight. The ground works on you until dawn. The fire warms whichever side of you is facing it, and the ground pulls at the side that cannot get away. And only one of those 2 is still going at 4 in the morning. That is the whole secret, and it is worth more than anything in your pack. Not the tent, not the bag, not the number on the tag. What you put underneath you. None of this is hard, and that is the sad part. $3.90, a flattened box, a folded fleece. It stopped getting handed along until a generation grew up owning fine equipment and shivering inside it. You are at the end of that chain, and you do not have to stay there. Put a sunshade in the trunk of the car this week, and the next cool night you sleep out. Lay it under your shoulders and hips and see for yourself. Then put the same $3 in a child's hands and tell them why it works, because that is the only way any of this ever traveled. Next time I want to show you how the old camps cooked a whole supper down in the coals with no pot and no pan at all, and baked bread in a hole in the ground with the fire sitting on top of it. It is older than this country, and it works as well tonight as it ever did. I will see you there.